Grief that comes with miscarriage is not a sickness, Mr. Speaker, it is a loss, and that loss takes time. Time to recover physically and time to recover mentally.
That was Ginny Andersen, an MP with New Zealand's Labour Party. She'd introduced a bill to provide paid bereavement leave to couples following a miscarriage. That motion passed this week with unanimous consent. It's expected to become law in the next few weeks. Once finalized, couples will be eligible for 3 days leave after suffering a miscarriage. That'll make New Zealand the second country in the world after India to put such a measure in place. And that MP, Ginny Andersen, joins us now from New Zealand. Hi, Ms. Andersen. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us here on Canada Tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
So tell me why you thought it was important to bring this legislation in.
Look, there was a great need there. It was brought to me. A constituent came to their electorate MP, basically explaining that they'd had a miscarriage and they thought they should be entitled to bereavement leave. So it's one of those beautiful cases of democracy where a citizen raised an issue, brought it to Parliament and changed the law.
Wow. And, you know, the reaction really has been international. It certainly has women here in Canada talking. What are you hearing from women about this?
It's been an overwhelming response, both through social media and also through those who submitted during the process of the legislation. So here in New Zealand, we have a select committee process which is open for members of the public to submit their views. And we had an overwhelming response from women and men who supported the legislation.
Yeah, interesting you say women and men, because this law will be for couples. So both will be entitled to take leave. Why was that important?
Because it's important to acknowledge that a time for grieving affects both parents. So irrespective of gender, it's important that both of those parents have time to grieve and to come to terms with their loss.
Do you hope that this is going to change the way that we talk about pregnancy loss, or remove that taboo and the stigma? And really the shame is what I hear from a lot of women, feeling like they don't want to talk about it, or they're not sure how to talk about it, but it really is quite common. The stats here in Canada I was reading was about 1 in 4 pregnancies.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have 20,000 a year in New Zealand. So, look, it's one of the things that I've hoped would achieve just beyond changing the law is to stimulate a discussion around areas like miscarriage, stillbirth, childbirth, those sorts of areas that we don't tend to talk about. And it's been really nice to be able to have conversations like you with you to make sure women know it's okay to talk about these sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some women sharing the story about the law and disclosing, I experienced a miscarriage and I went back to work the next day, or I experienced this and I only took a day off, or had the weekend and was back in on Monday. I never told my boss. I'm assuming you heard those kinds of stories when you were going through this process.
All the time, and the immense sense of kind of relief when women had the opportunity of sharing those stories that they'd been holding them back for some time. I mean, it's kind of an unspoken rule that when you're pregnant, you don't tell anybody until you're 3 months or 12 weeks. That first trimester, when you're most likely to have a miscarriage, you don't say you're pregnant. And I think that that's interesting. We're so fearful of not wanting to tell people that it even structures the way we announce our pregnancies.
Not wanting to tell people that you're pregnant, because then you would have to tell them if you experience a loss. Now, New Zealand becomes one of only 2 countries to have a law like this. We mentioned India is the other one. They offer 6 weeks. What would you like to see in terms of other countries? Would you like to see more countries taking this on?
Well, I think a lot of countries have provisions already for stillbirth, which is typically about 20 weeks plus into pregnancy. But I think it's just as critical for all women and their partners to have access to bereavement leave. So I would love to see this taken on by other countries.
You know, and if it doesn't get to a legislative level, do you encourage companies to take this on in their own employee policies?
Well, I'm sure there's lots of good employers out there who would give any employee who needed that time, the time off to come to terms with their loss. But I think it's even more reassuring to give people the knowledge that they have that right in legislation, so they won't be afraid coming forward when they need to.
All right, Ginny Andersen is an MP from New Zealand. She's behind a new law that mandates paid bereavement leave for couples following a miscarriage. Thanks so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.